Hello and welcome to CERA Week 2025. I'm Doug Giuffre, I'm Executive Director with S&P Global, and I'm very pleased to be joined today by Kathleen Barrón from Constellation, Executive Vice President and Chief Strategy and Growth Officer. Kathleen, how is CERA Week going so far?
It's great. I mean, this is obviously the premier energy event in America. I've already run into plenty of people, and then the rest of the week is going to be just as good in terms of making connection with customers, having an opportunity to share our story with the audience and policymakers that are in attendance, and really learning from each other.
That's great. Yeah, in this, last year and certainly this year, AI, data centers really dominated the conversation at CERA Week and just in industry in general. And certainly Constellation is playing a big role there. I mean, can you share some thoughts on how the new surge in electricity demand and how Constellation is responding to it?
Well, it is a surge in demand. There's no question that demand is going up, and that's a unique experience for those of us in the power markets versus the last 20 years. It's not just because of AI. Obviously, there's a greater push for electrification, there's reshoring of industry, and this data economy imperative that we all know we need to meet as an industry. And I think the power industry has seen times when there has been dramatic increases in demand year over year. It's been a while, but we have had 9% annual growth, for example, back in the 50s. So we know that our job is to make sure that when that switch is flipped, the lights come on, and it's no different for this set of customers. I do think there is a little bit of sort of frothiness in the estimates. There is a little bit of, sometimes can be some hysteria in terms of thinking about the absolute worst case in terms of demand growth from data centers, for example. I do think that's moderating a fair bit, where people are starting to appreciate that it's rational behavior, just as with the interconnection queue for new generation. When you're interconnecting load, there are entities that will put in deposits and ask for studies in multiple locations, but they're not actually intending to build every single data center that is submitted for study. And I think people are starting to appreciate that we are going to see some growth. We're going to need to see some growth in new generation in places, but we can meet this demand, and we need to. It's essential for America to win the AI race, and I think the power industry knows what their role is.
That's really interesting. You make the point about some of the frothiness there and some of the speculative load interconnections. I think, or I wonder if, as we see load forecasts, if they come down a little bit from where they were, say, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, what that will mean for speculation around the industry. Because, our view is certainly that the demand is very real, but, maybe it's nationwide more like 2% and not 4%.
Exactly.
There will be regions that are 5 or 6, but...
That's right. And that means that we need to, maintain, from Constellation's perspective, we need to make sure that we can keep our existing fleet operating, that we can expand it where that's possible. And in the case of our station up in Pennsylvania, restarting a shuttered nuclear plant to serve a data economy customer. We serve about 16 million homes and businesses across the country. We make 1 out of every 10 zero carbon megawatts. And clean energy is obviously in high demand from these customers, in addition to energy that runs 24/7. And so nuclear is a good fit for that type of customer. And that's sort of what we're focusing on, is making sure that we can serve those customers when and where they want to interconnect, and do so in a way that's as least cost possible for the rest of the grid.
Right. You mentioned, the deal to restart 3 Mile Island and just how seismic that was, I think, for the industry to look and say, wow, this is on the table. There are other opportunities here for nuclear in the near term and maybe some challenges. Can you share?
Yeah, I mean, I think the opportunity to restart a plant is limited. There's maybe one or two other plants in the country that haven't reached a point in decommissioning where they could reverse. Now, this station shut down in 2019, so unfortunately, it will have been shut down for quite a long period of time by the time it restarts to serve Microsoft's needs. And that is because of the economic challenges that the fleet was facing in the last decade. So we have, with federal support now, a longer runway to sort of envision the plant's both adding new capacity, as I mentioned, which what we call uprating, where we're adding new megawatts at an existing site. We have many opportunities to do that across our fleet, about 1,000 megawatts of uprate potential. That's like a whole new reactor. But the real game changer here is relicensing the plants for another 20 years. Like, they have to have approval from the NRC to go from 60 years of operation to 80. The NRC has determined that that is absolutely possible. These are very solid machines that are constantly being rebuilt essentially every 2 years during refueling outages, with new components, new parts being installed. Obviously, lots and lots of inspections and safety testing. But if we can get the existing fleet to go from all of them to go from 60 years to 80 years, that's well past mid-century into the 2070s for our fleet. That is, I mean, if you think about the nuclear fleet world nationwide, that's 20% of the nation's energy, carbon-free, reliable, around the clock. Staying on the grid for another 20 years, that's really the thing that we need to make sure happens. And having these customers as a potential offtake for the plants, encouraging them to relicense and stay on the grid another 20 years, we think that that's really going to make a big difference in our push to make sure that we keep both clean and reliable electricity on the grid.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Certainly relicensing, I think, for the fleet is going to be a big deal if we can get it done in a timely manner. And 1,000 megawatts across Constellation's fleet, that is remarkable. That's a great statistic. Talking about reliability, and we seem in the industry to see somewhat of a pivot back to natural gas. There's a lot of discussion at CERA Week. We're talking about the gas turbine order backlog, and Constellation recently announced they're acquiring Calpine, one of the nation's largest producers of power from natural gas and geothermal. How does that affect your planning and strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think there is a growing appreciation that in order to enjoy the economy that we have and the low prices that we have and the economic growth that we have, we're going to need to rely on natural gas for some period of time. And the idea of acquiring Constellation, Calpine, which is not just the largest natural gas producer, but also the largest geothermal producer. They have a heavy storage development book, is to make sure that we can serve customers coast to coast with whatever type of energy they want, whenever they want it. It just gives us far more reach than we have as being predominantly a nuclear operator and predominantly sort of an East Coast, and Midwest firm. They have a heavy presence in California, Texas, and in other places where we're not as predominant. So that's the logic of the transaction, and we are hopeful that we can get through the regulatory approvals this year and close it by the end of the year so that we can operate the two companies and to serve the needs of American customers.
Well, a lot of opportunities on the nuclear side and the gas side and across regional markets, because we are seeing growth really universally across the country.
Yeah.
There are pockets in PJM and ERCOT where it's much stronger, but a lot of opportunities. So we'll look forward to seeing how all this evolves and now Constellation continues to influence the power markets. So appreciate your time today, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you.